Welcome back. Thank you all for staying this afternoon. Again, my name is Chris Malinsky. I'm the Director of Education, Engagement, and Learning here at the museum, and it's my great pleasure to welcome the artists Devin Allen and Dr. Ernest L. Gibson III. I hope that you all enjoyed the film. It's not my first time seeing it, and if you'd like to rewatch it, it's on HBO, but it's a beautiful experience, I always think, to watch films together in a dark space, something that I've certainly missed doing over the past couple of years. Dr. Gibson, our guest tonight, this afternoon, I say tonight as a reflex, I guess, received his PhD in Afro-American Studies from the University of Massachusetts Amherst. He's Associate Professor of English and Africana Studies at Auburn and is the Director of the Africana Studies Program here at Auburn. He's the author of Salvific Manhood, James Baldwin's novelization of male intimacy, and is currently at work on a second book project titled Dark Penmanship, Afro-Ontology, Resistance, and Freedom. It's a great pleasure to have Dr. Gibson here today, and I hope this is the start of many more collaborations together at the museum. I'm also delighted today, honored to introduce the great artist, Devin Allen. Baltimore native Devin Allen, as you saw in the beautiful film, gained national attention when his photograph of the Baltimore uprising was published on the cover of Time magazine in May of 2015, making him only the third amateur photographer to have his work featured in the publication. Following the untimely deaths of George Floyd, Tony McDade, and Breonna Taylor, his photograph from a Black Trans Lives Matter protest was published on the cover of Time magazine in June 2020. And you saw those images in the film that we just watched together. In 2017, he was named the first fellow of the Gordon Parks Foundation Fellowship and was nominated for an NAACP Image Award as a debut author for his book, A Beautiful Ghetto. And I think we still have one copy of the book in the gift shop if anybody wants to purchase it on their way out. Maybe you can even get a signed copy. His photographs have been published in New York Magazine, the New York Times, Washington Post, and Aperture Magazine, and are also in the permanent collections of the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C., the Reginald F. Lewis Museum, the Studio Museum in Harlem, and I'm very proud to say that we are in the final stages of acquiring his work for our museum here in Auburn as well. He's the founder of Through Their Eyes, a youth photography educational program, and recipient of an award from the Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture for dynamic leadership in the arts and activism. His new book, since we only have one copy of the last one, look for this one, No Justice, No Peace, From the Civil Rights Movements to Black Lives Matter, is scheduled to be released in fall of 2020. It is my great honor to welcome Devin Allen to Auburn, Alabama, and I turn the conversation over to you both.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Look, the mic quality in the museum is wonderful. Don't you all agree? Yeah. Wonderful. That's my nervousness talking. Devin, if I may, welcome to Auburn. Welcome to the South. Auburn's a little bit different than Baltimore, so don't hold that against us too much. But first off, as for levity, you see I put on my kill shots. I don't have any Under Armour. For you all in the audience, Devin is one of the rarest photographers in that he has his own shoe collection with Under Armour. I don't know if you all know that. You're laughing because you think I'm joking, but I'm dead serious. And so thanks for being here.
No, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're going to jump right in because we don't have that much time, and time is often selfish. And so I thought we could start with Gordon Parks himself. A choice of weapons, and I'm quoting Parks here. I picked up a camera because it was my choice of weapons against what I hated most about the universe: racism, intolerance, poverty. I'm wondering if you can talk to us a bit about both what we saw in the film, but more specifically, how you come to understand the multifaceted function of the camera, its relationship to art, to activism, to making an impact in community or communities, and just how you think the film captured that spirit.
Yeah, when I picked up photography, I kind of stumbled across it. Like I said in the film, I was in the streets in Baltimore. I didn't plan my life past 21. I started losing friends at the age of 16, and then I had a daughter at 19, which kind of prompted me to want to, change my life. And I had this amazing friend who introduced me to poetry. I started off as a poet. Was not good at it at all, you see. But, that introduced me to the arts. Arts was never really offered to us in city schools or in Baltimore. Then you might have had one art class and it's like, draw this cube and this line does this, and that's it. Finger paint and make the little turkey things and the hand. But when I found photography, I just Googled famous Black photographers, and it was just all Gordon. I just was diving into his work, and I said, I want to be like him. And that was in 2012. And so when I first picked up the camera, I didn't know what I was going to do with it. It was just, I had to get a camera because I was borrowing my friends. He was like, give me my camera back. And I was like, I'm gonna go buy me a camera. And then no one told me how expensive it was. So I'm the oldest grandbaby. So I called my grandmother. Grandma, what you doing? And she said, you want something? You don't just call to see how my day is going. And she let me use her Best Buy credit card. And I got my first camera in 2013. I just started shooting everything. I just love the human interaction that I got from my peers. And sadly enough, the month after I got my first camera, both my best friends were murdered in one weekend. One was murdered Friday, and then one was murdered Saturday. And we were inseparable, but I just was so adamant about taking pictures. And I said, well, this is my thing. I'm going to run with it. I didn't really understand how powerful it was until Mike Brown passed away. And 2011, my friend Sean Gamble was murdered by Baltimore City police officers. And they had protests for him, but I had been so conditioned that this is life, this is what it is, and I cannot change or do anything about it. But when Mike Brown passed, Baltimore did a Stand in the Solidarity March. I said, I'm gonna go this time. And then I went, and I felt that energy. I seen the pain, I seen the celebration, the joy. It was fragile, like you felt like some change was coming, but it was very fragile. You can feel it in every chant. You can hear it on the hearts. And as I snapped those images and I put them on social media, and people started to see the work and saw that Baltimore was standing with Ferguson, that's when I kind of started to understand what Gordon was talking about, but I really started to understand once Freddie passed away. And me and Freddie Gray, I grew up the street. I literally just was out with Freddie Gray friends this weekend because we have mutual friends and we grew up with a lot of the same people. But once that imagery, and I started capturing that because I knew no one can navigate Baltimore like I could. And Baltimore, we have never been able to control our narrative. You never get to hear from the horse's mouth. It was always the wire, the news speaking for us, but I wanted to speak for us. And I just wanted to be the eyes of Baltimore. And I knew I didn't have a big platform, but I knew that with the power of social media and my community, I just wanted to tell the true story and what was going on in my community.
Yeah, no, there's so much richness just in that answer alone. So much that, again, I'm going to curse time. Like, I wish I had 3 hours to just start the conversation. But a couple of things. The first is, again, sorry for the loss of your best friends, right? It's one thing to lose when I'm thinking about Baltimore. It's one thing to witness the loss of Black life, but to be so intimately connected to that loss, I think, hits us in different ways. Thinking through the film again, one of the kind of central ideas that emerges and really struck me was this idea that there's a certain intimacy, a certain connection that the photographer must have that we saw modeled by Gordon Parks, embodied by Gordon Parks, exampled by Gordon Parks. And so I'm thinking of those moments when Parks is shooting, but is engaging with Red Jackson. I'm thinking of Gordon Parks and the Nation of Islam. I'm thinking of Muhammad Ali in particular. But let's talk a bit about how important that intimacy is between the photographer and the person he or she or they are photographing. And here I'm thinking of intimacy. In the film, it says, when Parks meets with the Nation of Islam, he must go through Elijah Muhammad. And Muhammad's like, hey, you need to show me something first, and then we can determine. And so intimacy, one, gets you in the door, but there's something else at play, right? Let's talk about that a bit.
I think for me, it's just a real big respect thing, taking your time. Even in my own community where I grew up at, I still have a lot of respect for different spaces. And you have to have a level of respect at all different levels. They talk about in the film how you can be a bum on the street or you can be Vanderbilt. You won't get that same level of respect. But also, it's just a lot of times as artists, we can make it about ourselves. So what I learned is what works for me is I remove myself. It's not about me. They allow me into their space. So they're doing me a favor, it's not about me. And I always have to think about that if it's going to different neighborhoods or shooting kids or, following people like Stephen Curry. I had to really realize that it's not about me. It's about the subject. I had to remove myself. And it's even similar when I'm on the front lines. The imagery, when I first started documenting protests, I just put the work out in the world. A lot of people thought I was this journalist, but I'm on the front lines and I'm just telling a story, but it's not about me. I have to remove myself. I have to be selfless in this thing. And yes, I am an artist. Yes, I want to produce the best work that I can produce, but in these moments, it's not about that. It's not about me. So I worked on a story where I was asked to document the opiate crisis. And I met this guy, Gary, and he just was amazing. But similar to Gordon, I spent like 2-3 weeks with him without even pulling out my camera. I bought him a copy of my book. I stopped past his house. He liked to play Scrabble, so I talked to him about playing Scrabble, got to know him, went to some of his meetings, and then, he trusted me. He understood that I cared. It was beyond the assignment. It's about how do you want to be seen? How do you feel? He said, I want to look strong. Yeah, it's a struggle, but I want to feel strong. So I said, I can do that. So every shot that I did on the story, I'm always making him look down at me. So I'm constantly shooting up, that make him look strong, that make him look bold, because that's how he wants to be represented through his strife and through his struggle. And it's sometimes you have to take a step back and just get to know a person and get them to take their layer down. But how do you want to be seen? How do you want your story told? It's the same thing when I shot the Black Trans Lives Matter March. And I'm like, why do you need to have their own march? And Tony McDade had passed. So I was like, I'm going to go. Because one thing I love about art, it brings so many different people from different walks of life. Growing up in Baltimore, you just can be in this bubble. But when I became an artist, it allowed me to meet people from different walks of life and different races and different nationalities. And it's just a beautiful thing that I love, that art can be that vehicle, not just for change, but to bring people together. And I went and I just, for the first time, I didn't understand, why they having this march, but they feel excluded. They felt like they're not part of the conversation. They feel like they didn't have support. And then, as a Black man that, on the front lines, I'm at every march, I can see where my peers are not here. But they're there for everybody else. Every George Floyd march, every Breonna Taylor march, but now it's Tony McDade. There's no one here. And I was like, I'm gonna shoot the hell out this thing, and that's what I did. I even had the correct time because they left Tony McDade off of it, and I had to be very adamant about this is their march, because I'm coming into their space. So it's just something that I feel as photographers is just removing that ego. That it's not about you, it's about your subject.
Yeah, and that ethic that you're speaking of, I've been vacillating on whether or not I was going to ask you about the behind the scenes when you were negotiating with Time on the second photo, and how receptive they were in terms of kind of labeling Black trans lives matter in motivating that particular piece, or if they just wanted the kind of spectacle of Black life in protest being captured, and they would run with it. So I'm glad you preemptively put it in. It says something about your ethic as a photographer, which I think is something we saw in the film with Gordon Parks. And so I'm gonna push you a little bit in terms of the intimacy, because I think there's a humility about you. So there's a moment in the film where you are shooting Coach Kelvin, I believe is his name, Coach Kelvin, who's doing this amazing work with the Baltimore youth. And you say that it's easy, right, to capture, right, someone being punched in the face, but those softer, more intimate, vulnerable moments are much harder. And you admit, you said you prefer those, right? And so then the camera pans to this wonderful youth, right, you can see the gentleness in their face, and this is this really endearing moment. And so I'm curious as to what is it about that countenance, that disposition, that expression of youth that you prefer, that you lean into? What is it about that intimacy that draws you in?
Yeah, I just think the imagery that I've grown up seeing coming out of Baltimore has always been rough. It's been cold because it's always has come from this overarching space that doesn't quite understand what's going on the ground. Our kids get demonized, villainized all the time. Every time, a kid is shot, it's just, oh, look at his record. It's not about looking at we have to navigate every single day. And then growing up, you don't have time, in my community to be happy. You can't smile too much. You got to be cold. If you're walking down the street, you might got to bump somebody. You always have to be stern and strong, and what I've learned through photography and growing up is, I have all these emotions that have been tucked away since I was a teenager. Just the love and the gentleness and the cheerfulness that was snatched away from me after losing friend after friend after friend that I stopped feeling. All these emotions that are coming back to me through the art form, I'm learning how to love, how to digest these things. Oh, that's what that feels like. Okay, this is depression. That's why I feel anxious. And this is why I'm sad, and I really have spent deprogramming myself of years of trying to be hard all the time. Like I hug my friends. They're like, why is you hugging me? It's because I love you. Come on, yo. You got, so like, but that's something I've learned through the art form. So when I'm like, for instance, it's like I don't know if you saw a shot of a kid and I shot up and he was kind of like punching real fast and it was like a low angle shot, but he got shot in the face. So now he has like a bullet sitting right here. They found him in the alley, and where is he at? Right back in the gym. It's funny because he just shot me a DM asking me how I've been, and I hooked him up when he was going to, going through rehabilitation. I put him in contact with Steph Curry's team so he can talk to like real sports professionals so he can get back in that gym, get back in that ring. That's how he releases that energy, but it brings a certain sense of camaraderie and family. They're a family. So I wanted to show that is love here. Yeah, they're boxing. It is a rough sport, but it's love. It's passion. We care about each other. I wanted to show that, they got the kid helping the younger brother wrap his gloves, or the coach, leaning on he was actually giving them a pep talk because someone was messing up in school because they can't come in the gym and work out if they messing up in school. So, they go and get those grades right. And that's what I wanted to show, that these kids come to Coach Calvin, as a father figure, as a big brother. And then I'm in the gym now, and now, these kids want to do photography. I became a part of that family. I was able to put, like I said to you second, I got the Under Armour collab, but I was able to put some of those kids in Under Armour photo shoots for the youth program. I was able to put Coach Calvin in my Under Armour collab and film those kids again. I use his kids for Under Armour photo shoots. So and that's what it's about, to show that, a lot of times they say we don't care about our people, don't care about our community, but we do. And that's why I tend to try to show those moments.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I remember, I'm going to tell a little bit about my age. I'm a millennial, right? I don't know how old you are, Devin, but you look like you're younger than me. But one of the films I grew up on is Boys in the Hood, right? And so there's this wonderful moment at the end, shout out to John Singleton, right? There's this wonderful moment at the end where Doughboy, played by Ice Cube, right? He's walking away from Trey, right? And so it's this very similar dynamic where you have these young Black men who grew up in this very hard space where they're showing or trying to express intimacy in the only way they know how to express it. And Trey says to Doughboy, Doughboy's like, I've lost my brother. I lost, the only brother I had. And Trey says, you still have one brother left. But as Doughboy is walking away, there's a plane going overhead. And Doughboy says either they don't know, they don't care, or they don't show or they don't care about what's going on in the hood, right? And it's this idea that these spaces, like Baltimore, right, like Detroit, like Milwaukee, which is where I'm from, where you see the kind of ugliness in Black life, don't get, right, the opportunities to see beauty. I want to use that as a transition to both be selfish and to kind of push you towards this next idea. And it's so when I watched this the first time, I was excited because I'm a student and scholar of Ralph Ellison. And so Invisible Man, the greatest novel of the 20th century, no debate, no argument, meet me in the alley for hugs. But there's a moment, so Ellison begins Invisible Man in saying, I am an invisible man. No, I'm not a spook like those who haunted Edgar Allan Poe, nor am I one of your Hollywood movie ectoplasms. I'm a man of substance, flesh and bone, fiber and liquids, and I might even be said to possess a mind. I'm invisible, understand, simply because people refuse to see me. And so seeing Gordon Parks have this amazing friendship and kind of professional relationship with Ellison, and particularly surrounding this notion of invisibility, and then hearing you talk about how part of your motivation is to kind of tell the story of Baltimore, the narrative of Baltimore, that they won't allow people to tell, speaks to, again, the role of the photographer, the role of the artist, and making things more visible. And so, like, what is the hope? What is the aim in terms of what are those elements of Baltimore, of Blackness that you want to make more visible, and how do you approach it?
Yes. Oh my God, Baltimore has so much like flavor, and there's so many different layers, and it's just one of them cities where, even though I'm born and raised there, but I grew up hating it. I hated that city. Through photography, I fell in love with it because it was things that I ignored every day because I just had that tunnel vision of this is my life and this is what it is, and I wasn't looking around the corner. I was only looking straight down the street. But now I walk for days. And just walk from east to west to south. People are like, you good, brother? You need a ride? Like, I have a car. I'm just walking because if I drive, I'm gonna miss something.
You'll miss something.
But it's just, for instance, like we got these food deserts in Baltimore. You might have like one market. Your grandmother got to catch like 4 buses to get to it. But then you got these brothers that we call them Arabs, and they drive around in the hood on horses, been third generation delivering fruit to the community since like the 30s and still doing it. The young brothers doing it now. People don't know that.
Yeah.
So I show that. I'm actually about to, try to co-direct my first documentary about that. Dirt biking, when you first think about dirt biking, it's this negative narrative around dirt biking because these guys ride through the streets, but they don't understand that it's therapeutic. That is a community. You got people that come from all different parts of Baltimore. Even people come down from Philly, come up from DC, they meet at the park and then we're gonna ride out. It's dangerous, These guys are good. They want to be seen. This is how they be seen. Riding through the block. You see a cute girl, you want to get on back on my bike, I'll bring you back. It's a culture with it. But you don't see that. They just see, the police chasing them, even if it's against the law to chase people on a dirt bike, but the police still do it. Or police officers open their door. That's the stuff you see, but you don't see how they take care of each other. You don't hear about how this Black woman in Baltimore, to get kids engaged in engineering, she's teaching them how to build dirt bikes from scratch. And now these kids are into engineering now. And those are things that I want to show. Even for Under Armour, I was able to do Under Armour collab, but they don't talk about how Torrey Smith, they used to play for the Ravens, bought an old police station center, and that turned it into a farm and all this other stuff. And then me and Steph Curry built a basketball court. They don't talk about how reading is cool because you have writers like D. Watkins and Condwani Fidel. Condwani Fidel is one of my good friends, similar to the relationship that Gordon had with all his peers. I shoot all the writers in my city. Expanding into writing. My brother's 27. He's already a professor at Coppin State University.
Oh, that's awesome.
You don't hear those stories. D. Watkins just wrote for the HBO Wire, for the same people that wrote The Wire, but you don't hear his stories. He has a show on Salon, and he's from the projects. These are the stories. These are the things that I want to tell that that you might get a little snippet of it for like a minute on the news, but no one is diving deep enough. These are the things we have tucked the mantle up, and we're taking our narrative back in Baltimore. And I want to show imagery that inspires people like in Oakland and to Brooklyn to see what we're doing back home. You see people, saying like, we gonna take care of our own, and that's what we're gonna do, and that's what we've been doing. And I try to show that in the photography.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love how you said you have a. I can catch if you say you had a car, if you didn't, if you rushed through it because you may not have one. I don't know. But
oh yeah, I don't know, because I walk a lot, because that's how the community, like people. Oh, because a lot of people don't know my name sometimes. They just be like, oh, yo, that's Picture Man. Hey, Peter Parker. That's Baltimore's Peter Parker. So I'm walking, but that's how people they recognize my face. I'm walking, and people will say, yo, you good? You always walking. You got all those followers and you don't have a car? Like, no, I have a car. I just prefer to walk. I miss something if I don't.
That's the pitch right there. Is that two things. One, that you fell in love with Baltimore once you started getting into photography. That says, a couple things. I'm going to riff here. Like one, right, I think about how your photo, right, Baltimore Uprising, the other photo in 2020, your work, other artists like you who are doing similar work, but I think about how that work is transforming the narrative of Baltimore and how, in a sense, it is, to use my book title, it's salvific, right? It's engaging in a sort of saving of the city from all of those elements and entities that you spoke of earlier. But I'm also now very much kind of seduced by this idea of how photography saved the city for you, right? Like you said, you hated the city, but now that you had the lens, you saw Baltimore in a new way, right? And so how this amazing art form has given you a kind of new appreciation for the city in all of its complicated splendor. So that's one idea that you can riff on. But the other is that like this act like of movement and how walking kind of forces you to slow down and take in a city in a way in which oftentimes we don't because of technology and industry, right? We just zip past all of the things. And so can you talk just a little bit more about the slowing down, right? About the stillness of capturing, about how beauty becomes recognizable in the moment of standing still, right? Like all of those things.
Yes, one thing I love about photography, definitely journalism, street photography, which is like my favorite documenting the moment. You're always chasing these fleeting moments. But when you got that moment, it's tangible now. You can go back and revisit it. And that's how I fell in love with the city, because like you said, I was constantly moving. I didn't never take the time to really sit down and digest what's going on around me. But photography allows me to capture something that I feel something about. And then I get to sit with it, revisit it time and time again. Even if it's, it could be a picture of, just a brick wall, it could be a picture of anything, but if I feel something, how does this make me feel, and just walking, a lot of times we don't interact with each other as human beings anymore. We in Baltimore, people speed through, run lights, not to get caught at a light in certain neighborhoods. I don't feel safe here, as if we're not human, as if you're literally riding through a concrete jungle. But walking, get out your car, just walk. We're human. You can talk to people, interact with people, and that's what I love about photography. It's a good conversation starter. It allows you to start conversation, but also digest what you just went through or what you just saw. And one of the things that do hurt the most that I have been able to slow down is the fact that the world is still moving so fast around me. Mm-hmm. A lot of times the most painful thing about documenting my community is the fact that a lot of times I know so many people now, similar to Gordon, was like, oh, everybody starts to know you now. So like now people recognize me, which is a good thing, but it's always those minutes, those emotions. Like my friend got murdered 2 weeks ago. He was coming out of a restaurant and they killed him in downtown Baltimore. But it's like I'm the one that gets the DMs and the reach out. I know you used to hang with my son, or you used to hang with my cousin. You got a picture of him? You know, I have so many images on obituaries. Like it's just crazy, you know. But at the same time, it gives not so much pride. I don't know what it is, but the pride in the parents or the cousin or the mother in seeing their child in a positive light. Instead of seeing that negative imagery, like they try to show in the news all the time, demeaning us, you know, and those moments are gone, but those I'm able to give those imageries back to the families and to children, you know, even down to the jail system. I have one of my friend's daughters reached out to me, you know, my friend is facing 10 years in jail and that's her dad, you know, and she said, can you send me all the pictures you have of my dad so I can have him and then we want to send them to him? You know, it's just like, but you never think, I don't think about those things when I'm documenting. I'm just trying to capture this moment. But like you said, once it's locked in, but at least I have these things to revisit, you know, and I know I shot it with my heart. And now in these dark moments, I have something that's tangible that I can hold, that I can help digest all these emotions that's running through my heart and in my head right now. And it's therapeutic.
No, it is. And I hear the vulnerability and the passion and the love like in your voice as you're talking, right? And the audience isn't as close, but you can see it like in your face as well, not to magnify it. I'm thinking about that moment in the film where they speak about Gordon Parks and Malcolm on the train ride back, and Parks says, Malcolm leans over to me, right, and says, you know, I respect what you're doing, brother. And Gordon's like, oh my God, this is the first time you call me brother. Malcolm's like, this is the first time you deserve it. But what grabs me, you know, I do Black male studies and male intimacy and vulnerability. So what really grabs me in that moment, though, was what came after. And that was Parks said, you know, he put his head on my shoulder and fell asleep, right? And so that bond, again, that connection, I'm just thinking again about the friendships that you're forming and how folk are reaching out for those memories that you have. But also after Parks writes that piece up on the Black Muslim series, they say that was the moment he became an activist too. And so, you know, I'm gonna quote you here, and I'm gonna read because I don't want to misquote. You know, you say this, and you said it often, that, quote, every day that I wake up, I have to understand that my career, all the things that I am able to do now as a full-time photographer, is built on the broken back of Freddie Gray, right? And that's real, that's weight, that's burden in a sense. I can only imagine the heaviness, right, of carrying that, and I don't want to reproduce that heaviness, but here we are. And so April 12th, right? April 19th, April 25th, and now here you are, right? Baltimore uprising. Can you invite us in, or will you invite us into that kind of interior space of you when you were shooting in that moment? Like, what's going through your head at the protests? How are you seeing what you're capturing? What are you feeling as this witness to be Baldwinian in that moment?
Yeah, you know, like I said earlier, I knew no one can tell that story better than me. And at the time, to pursue photography, I worked overnight with young adults with autism and intellectual disabilities. So I would work from 12 at night to 8 in the morning when they would go to school. And that would have free my whole day out for shooting. So I literally was out Freddie Gray to 12. I was out every day. Every time there's a protest, we there, you know, marching from Gilmore Homes, downtown, City Hall. I did that for like 3 months straight. And I wasn't thinking about myself. You know, I was just thinking about I need to capture everything. We need to control this narrative. And so me and my friends was out, you know, me and like my peers, and I think the most shocking day was on the 25th. And it was a peaceful day. You know, it was probably one of the biggest marches. It was probably like 2,000 people, like so many people, you know, from so many different walks of life. People came from DC, other places, and everything was fine until we got to the baseball field where people was upset that they had to, like, the baseball game was going on, but nobody was allowed to go. And they basically locked down the whole stadium. And that's where all the police were stationed at. And then next thing I know, we got people throwing mad, like, Red Sox fans and some Oriole fans, baseball fans were throwing peanuts at us, calling us monkeys, calling us the N-word. Like, I was like, what year is this? This is crazy. And then you got to think about it. The N-word, you know, definitely for, you know, a lot of my peers and where I come from was always used as a term of my brother, you know, in terms of endearment. So you got these kids, you know, a lot of us, you know, if you're from West Baltimore, a lot of people don't leave from West Baltimore. You know, they live in, like I said, like live in a bubble. They stay in their community. So for the first time, these kids are 16 and 15, 14, you know, getting called this from white lips. And, you know, all hell broke loose. And it was literally the youth versus like these full-grown adults, you know, and that's when everything turned to the police cars and everything. And it's funny, if you actually look in the film, you can see me dodging. My hair's not as long as it was now, but you can literally see me right where the police cars are in the film. If you go back and watch it, I have like a blue jean jacket on and baby blue. But the crazy thing about it is I didn't feel like I was in danger, you know, because while I was shooting, my brother had his hand on my back, a good friend of mine, to make sure I was okay. And we actually, you know, and then the police came, and then next thing I know, you had police officers from as far as like, you know, Pennsylvania, other parts of Maryland. And I didn't think anything of it. I just was still in shock. It's like my body just went into autopilot mode. You know, I wasn't even thinking. I was shooting, uploading, and what I did was, to move fast to the media, I would shoot in black and white, Wi-Fi to my phone, and post while I was on the ground. So before CNN and a lot of people start reporting, I was already putting stuff on Twitter and putting stuff on Instagram. That's how everybody started figuring out what's going on, and everything started going viral. And I'm shooting it, and then my phone rings. It's my mom. She's watching my daughter. So she was like, Devin, I heard it's getting kind of crazy down here. You need to come get your daughter. She got into that candy. And my daughter's like at the time, like 6. She's all over the place. Come get her. She get on my nerves. I'm trying to watch her movies. I said, all right, I'm on my way. I just got to walk to the car. I'm not walking to the car. I'm literally between protesters and police officers. So then, you know, my mom calls back. What you doing? I said, nothing. I'm walking to the car. She said, boy, you lying. I see your black ass on TV. Why you so close? I'm like, Mom, I'm fine. You know, and then, you know, I went there, went to sleep, woke up, work started going viral. I didn't think anything of it. Went back out, just kept going back out. When Tom called me, you know, I hung up on her a couple times when they called me, because they called from a block number. I don't answer block numbers. It was just a lot to take in. I didn't realize I was taking in so much energy, because I just was like on autopilot mode. Go to work, get off, protest, front lines, we getting tear gas, pepper spray. People was getting snatched up. You know, people was like getting snatched up. You're like, where's so-and-so at? You wouldn't even know, because they wasn't processing you. So if you try to look and see if someone's getting processed, they just holding you. You know, the next thing you know, National Guard, police officers from New Jersey, Pennsylvania, DC, Virginia. And I didn't think nothing of it. And a lot of people don't know, like, as we was like shooting these things, people were like really getting hurt, getting harassed. Once I got the time cover and all those things, police officers start harassing me, following me home. They lied to me and told me my license was suspended, made me get out the car and walk home, and follow alongside me, harassing me. And then eventually I broke down, and then I tried to commit suicide. Wow. Like I tried, and you know, I find power, and you know, when you ask me, like, I find power in talking about it. I hid it for a while, but I talk about it public now because it empowers me, and I know it, and I watch. Now, you know, years later, I watched other photographers go through it, definitely with George Floyd, you know, and that's one of the things I start speaking about it, because when I tried, I thought I felt weak. You know, I felt broken, because my mother found me. And you got to think about it. You know, Freddie Gray just died a month ago, and now all my mother could think of was, you can't call the paramedics without involving the police. Right. So my mother had to call the police on me. You know, left out the house in shackles, you know, handcuffed. It was so crazy, because the police officer, when he put me in the back seat, he gave me a pep talk. black police officer, I know who you are. You got so much to live for. Your work is so good. Gave me this whole pep talk, and around the same time, my dad was never really around, but it was just crazy how the universe works. He had admitted himself a couple weeks before that into Shepherd Pratt, which is like a mental health space. He got released the day I went into the hospital. He actually picked me up from the hospital when I got home. I had my whole family surrounded around me, and from that I made it through it, and I felt stronger, and I was like, all right, well, I need to share this story. So I just started speaking out about it, and then fast forward, George Floyd, I found myself 5 years later right back on the front lines, and I can see the dread, I can see the pain, and I can see how my peers have aged. Somebody said, you look younger than on that camera. And I was like, we filmed that in 2017. I learned how to heal since then. I learned how to take time for myself. I learned how to meditate. I learned it's okay not to always be on the front lines and to take off. It's okay. I've learned a lot. And that's why I'm starting to get my youth back because I was stressing myself out. But yeah, it broke me. But I was just happy I made it through it because it made me stronger. So when George Floyd and the whole world erupted, I could be there for the new photographers that's just coming on the front lines, that's dealing with it on a whole national level. Baltimore, we always felt like we was alone. And the only people that understood was Ferguson at the time. You had Obamas calling us thugs and all types of things coming from every direction. And we felt like people looked down on us because of how our city is set up. But now, in 2020, I was able to be the anchor and be that support and talk to my other brothers and sisters on the front line, like, call me. I'm here. If you need me, I've been there. You're not alone, So it was a dark moment, but it put me in a position to heal and help others heal also.
Yeah, no, thank you for, again, that sharing, that offering that many of us don't deserve, but definitely will benefit from, and for the kind of redemption of self, right? Like the rebuilding of self, the weight of bearing witness, right? I think what's so rich about your sharing, in spite of its struggle, is that it highlights the role, again, of the artists in this kind of activist space, in this movement for Black life, that sometimes I think goes taken advantage, goes taken for granted. And that is, here you have the photographer or the artist, be it literary or visual, who is charged, whether it's ethically or professionally, to capture and document the moment. And oftentimes we don't understand that that's a double weight upon their shoulders, because they're not just engaged in the act of protest or resistance or pleading out for help, but they also have to kind of relive, right? I'm thinking about, you capture the protests, but then you have to go back and edit photos, right? Or go through those photos. And so each moment that you're looking through or you're circulating through those photos, you're reliving that moment over and over again. So I both understand and sympathize with that break, and glad that you recognize early enough how to heal from it, and that you're becoming a resource for other folk. I want to pivot just a moment, and I'll just kind of ask a couple more questions and we can open up to the audience, because I believe in centering Black women, right? And so one of the most compelling kind of figures in the film is LaToya Ruby Frazier, and the work that she was doing with the Flint water crisis and that wonderful family, but also Newton, Mississippi. And so that moment where the father says, the water down here won't kill you, come home. The water down here won't kill you, come home. And the image of her, right? Drinking, right? Again, the power of photography. I think what Frazier gives us is how what you all do, and what you all do so well, is capture, in the capturing of a people is the capturing of a place, right? But more specifically for Black folk, because we've had such a tortured history with space and place and land and home, how it becomes inseparable in a sense, right? So when you're capturing the guy gently touching the memorial at Freddie, the Freddie Gray Memorial, or when you're capturing the children. Yes, we're seeing the people of Baltimore, but we're also seeing Baltimore. Talk to me about what we get from Frasier and that intimate connection between people as a conduit of getting to the heart of a space.
Yeah, that's my girl. When I met her to go on Paul's gala, and I was scared to speak. And she was like, "I know who you are. Come give me a hug." And then we had an amazing time. Just her body of work alone, and just how she's able to like just have someone feel so safe and vulnerable, and that takes it's more than just time, but it's also, as a photographer, we have to be vulnerable also, because we have to get you to trust us. So if you're sharing your personal life, to follow her from Flint down to her dad's house and revisit that's deeper than photography. It's a love there. You can see it in the imagery. You can see it, in the conversation. You can see it. You can just see it in everything. And she's like an OG. I'm just trying to put it into words because I've studied her work, and as a person that when I saw her story. Baltimore, we have a really bad lead problem also in our water for years. Like we couldn't even drink the water in our schools. Still can't. Yeah. So when I saw, before I saw the film, when I was looking to her work, definitely when you talk about Black women photographers, even just navigating the space for them is way different from me. And one thing that, that I did in my own work is I pass up a lot of the work that I create is for me, right? And a lot of times these stories like Flint are not told by us. And sometimes you need that only a Black woman can tell a certain story. And I draw the line where every story ain't meant to be told by me. And what I love about the Rubies or the Sheila Brights, I'm trying to think, join the Black. Or you look at this Carrie May. You look at all these Black women photographers, how they're able to document and bring it just full circle. And I remember a job came across my desk to document the Women's March and following women down there, and I was just like, I'm not a woman though. I just think that should be shot by. Sometimes it's once again they hid from a space that is connecting. If you look at what Ruby went to, how she's coming from a small town, that reason why that work is so good because she felt connected to it and you can feel it. So sometimes as a photographer, I judge photographers and I judge myself. It's not always about the pictures that you take. Sometimes it's about the pictures you don't take. Sometimes it's okay to put the camera down and just live in that moment. Maybe that story's not for you to be told. So I just think about when I look at people like Ruby or Sheila Bright, like some stories are meant to come from a Black woman, and that's just is what it is.
Man, you're amazing. I love the ethic, and yeah, that's it. That's all I'm gonna say about it. So I didn't thank Joan or Chris, but they know my heart. But they asked me to be here at a certain time, and when I came. Both of them asked if I wanted to come and be introduced. And at the time, you were sitting at the table with a group of students. And I told them no, right? And it was for two reasons. One, as a part of my kind of professional ethic, I never want to take an artist, an academic, right, a figure away from students. Because I believe they deserve that time, and oftentimes they don't have that time. But the other part is I wanted to kind of bear witness to you. So I stood there in the window and watched, right, outside. I wish I was a photographer to capture the moment, but alas, I'm simply a literary artist. But it was a beautiful kind of frame, a beautiful capture. Just seeing you, I can see the genuineness, I can see the authenticity, I could see how you were drawn to not just the craft or the art or the impact that photography brings you, but what it can offer like the next generation. And so I think for me, a great place to kind of end my engagement with you is just thinking about through their eyes, right? Thinking about the wonderful work that you're doing through your foundation and how you're empowering, right, the kind of next generation of Black photographers to, one, fall in love with the city that they may not love or don't know that they don't love, or before they don't love it. But two, also kind of arm the next generation to be the kind of fighters on the front lines as artists. And so I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about, not even about like the technical aspects of, the work and how it works, but the joy that comes from it, and what inspires you with it.
When you got that's a loud table.
Yeah, y'all may not
It's over
hear,
here
it's really loud.
vibrating. But the reason why I started it, I just remember being on the front lines and then watching like kids be on their bikes, fearless, riding through police officers, giving police officers the middle fingers, on the front lines, not scared of nothing. But I was like, wow, like what if they had a camera in their hand? If I'm able to control the narrative of Baltimore, I'm just one person. But what if I had like a whole army of like little Devins with me? What could they capture? So, and mind you, when I was shooting this stuff, everything that I learned from Gordon, I studied his work and then emulated my own and then made it my own style. And so at that point, I was still learning. I had a camera for like 2 years, so I don't know everything, but I was like, well, I'm gonna teach them what I know. And I was like, I don't have no money. What I'm gonna do? I was like, oh yeah, GoFundMe. And then I made a GoFundMe and then people start donating. I was like, wow, while I have this platform, let me just use it to the best capabilities, and then Russell Simmons and Michael Skolnick actually saw it and then reached out to me through the guy, DeRay, who's also from Baltimore. He's known for a lot of stuff. He was on the front lines in Ferguson and in Baltimore. And he reached out to me and said, Russell Simmons is looking for you. And I was like, what are you looking for me for? He was like, I don't know, he might have some money. And I was like, all right, well, give him my number. And we was on the phone. And then we were just talking about, how I got into photography, just, it's a casual conversation. And he was like, well, how much you need? We started to go from how much you need. And I was like, Ma, how much should I ask for? She was like, he gonna just write it off anyway. He rich. I said, all right. I said, well, I originally was asking for $10,000. I already got 3. He was like, well, we're gonna give you 25. So then awesome. I was like, oh, we're going to bring you the check. So then I thought they was going to really bring me the check. But no, they brought me one of them big rush car checks. So I'm driving through West Baltimore to go show my grandmother this huge $20,000 check hanging out the back of my hatchback. And all I can hear as I come down the street, yo, let me hold something, yo. Can you take me to the mall? Like, it was just like, everybody just was so proud, And it was so interesting. Around the same time, Armor had just found out about me. And they was like, who's this kid in our own backyard? Buy him a passport. He's going to Asia with Steph Curry. And I'd never traveled before outside. And I remember going to buy the cameras from a local camera store that I used to come in there and play with everything. And then buy like a $30 SD card and be like, all right, y'all. I couldn't afford nothing. And so I came back. They always supported me. So I bought all the equipment from them. They gave me free camera bags. I put them in my trunk. And I drove down to the kids' safe zone where the community, there was so many kids out on the street. They took an old laundromat and put some game systems in there, and people donated food to get kids off the street. So all the kids from Freddie Gray's neighborhood would be in there just hanging out. It was like no programming or nothing. It's summertime just to get them off the street because it wasn't safe. And I remember pulling up like, who want to learn photography? And I just remember this kid, excuse my friends, but this kid just was like, if you don't get the fuck out of here, I was like, what? We don't want to learn photography. And they was like, he got a time cover. We don't got a time cover. And then I was like, well, I'm going to Asia with Steph Curry. They was like, give me that camera. And then it spawned, and the joy came from it just like, I let them guide me. It wasn't about technical. It was about the fact that, they started to look at me as a mentor, as a big brother, to the point where they would just take me around their hood. You take me. And then they would go and shoot pictures. They thought they knew they was doing because they had camera phones, and they would get upset. My picture too blurry. My picture too dark. And then that's when I started working the technical aspects to make it better, and then we did art shows and to get to see their work, and they were just blown away to the parents start reaching out, thank you so much. And that's when I figured it started working, and then I went back to my old neighborhood, and then I donated money to the library teacher. So then kids wrote essays. They can just not just go, rent a book out. You can literally go and get a camera out of the library, and then we did it that way. And then it got to the point where 5 years later, my kids, some of them are going to college. One of my kids got a full ride to NYU. I still talk to my kids. I just had to do a shoot. One of my kids came, and it's like a little family. Still talk to all of them. I lost count after 600 cameras. I've donated cameras to the Studio Museum of Harlem. I've went to Oakland and toured on behalf of Steph Curry. And then Steph Curry popped up, he redid a basketball court. And I told the kids, you better take good pictures. Steph is coming. They thought I was lying. You don't know Steph? Okay. I already know he coming. Kids lost, kids was like, I'm like, you supposed to be working, you're working. It was nice, kids, start getting paid for what they do. And that's when I started realizing that it gave confidence. The Gordon Parks Fellowship, they gave me a $10,000 grant. I went to East Baltimore and taught kids with autism and intellectual disabilities. And that's when I found out, okay, now it's a communication tool. One of my kids was nonverbal, but I was jealous for how good he was. I'm like, I just taught you last week and he got it. He started documenting food. His mom, they love going to old markets and traveling. So he was just documenting food. One of my kids was into Boy Scout. He started shooting his Boy Scout meetings. My other kids started shooting football. And then it's just watching these kids who have trouble communicating coming out of their shelves through this medium. And it's to the point now, before I came here, I got a new mentee, COVID slowed me down a lot, but, we coming back, during COVID, the Under Armour collaboration, paid for programming and bought, 30 brand new Canon cameras for kids, to work with a nonprofit. And it's now some kids use it similar to Gordon. They use photography to open up other doors. Some of them do poetry now, some of them write. So even though photography might not be their thing, but they're using it as a vehicle to do other things, so just to sit back, and I'm just a proud parent, and, it feels good. And, and like I said, it's saving lives, similar to, it's getting kids off the street, or if they are on the street, they're becoming a positive influence around their other peers, and, that's something, when it's all said and done, that's what I'm going to look at my success, not for my work in museums or how I was able to travel the world, how much money I made. I want to, when I'm old and I can't even hold a camera steady because I'm shaking and my back hurt, I'm just, old. I want to see, this kid can say, I took this Devin Allen class and I put it on my resume, but now I got full ride, or I just want to see the next generation win, and same way with Gordon and Jamel Shabazz and Robert Houston, or Anthony Barbola. What these photographers have done for me, I've had the OGs come, Outrage that was in there, who was like, come on, Gordon, stop fucking around. I rode a train with him to the Gordon Parks Foundation. He gave me back and he sat me down. He said, it's your time now. He said, we getting old, it's your turn, pass it on, and that's when I realized, this gift is not mine, it's meant to be shared with the world, beyond just the imagery, but all the knowledge, every door that I open is not just about me, it's about what's coming behind me, and that's what I'm gonna, look at the end of the day, when I close my eyes, how much did I leave behind for the next generation?
That's amazing. Thanks for your work, your spirit and your heart. Good man. I think this is a good space for us for me to breathe. You can't breathe yet, but I'm going to breathe and open up to the audience.
Enjoy the program. I love your work. So that's a question that, oftentimes in photography, as well as even in some memorials, Black life is not depicted in a way that, where our humanity is in the forefront. So would you speak to how the humanity of Black life is a priority in your photography?
Oh, yes, of course. When I first started, I couldn't even, one thing I would never forget, Aaron Bryant from the Smithsonian, when I first got my time covered, and I didn't know the history of the Black photographer. I didn't know any. And he sat me down and gave me all these books from Roy De Carrera, Jamel Shabazz. And this was the imagery that I was looking for, those intimate moments coming from the heart. I believe that some of the best photographers shoot from their heart, not their eyes. And what I realized, he gave me a film called Through a Lens Darkly by Eric Thompson. And as I watched this documentary, how imagery has been, used to degrade our Black people since forever, down to Deborah Willis talks about how, they will hire free Black people to do, eat oversized watermelons or choke chickens and photograph these things and create these false narratives, down to talking about, the importance of, taking Black imagery and taking it around the world to counteract that narrative that has been created, before, around us, and so when I started photographing, even down to protests, and the reason why I know we talked earlier, and a lot of people think I go on assignments and I don't, is because sometimes the narrative they want me to tell is not a narrative that I want to tell, even down to I looked at photography and the fact that the police officers in Baltimore got off, but then you got Black protesters that's still in jail to this day. They got $1 million fines. This one kid was supposed to go to college, but he cut the fire hose. Somebody took a picture of it. That's how they found him. Face, everything in the picture. $100,000 in damages. Some photography can build something or destroy it. So I'm very selective how I photograph things and what I put out to the world. I have imagery that probably will never see the light of day. Because at the end of the day, some things I try to, it's hard because, you want to show the truth and what really happened, but at the same time, you have to protect Black lives at the same time. And I don't want to show, the imagery has to be shown, but there's ways that it can be shown. So a lot of times the work, what I focus on is that the humility, the love, the joy, the passion that we have for each other, because it's not seen often enough. And I find, from that film that a lot of that imagery is in the family album. It sits on our coffee tables. It sits at your grandmother's house collecting dust. And, that's what I'm doing right now. My grandmother gave me my childhood house. And I'm going through scanning all my family imagery, and that's when I realized my grandmother was the first photographer that I really knew. She was using her little disposable camera, shooting all the cookouts. Come on, put your Easter suit on. We're going to church, and I got all those images. And that's what when I meet young Black photographers, and then they ask me, how can I get into shooting? I always say, start in the house. That's how I started. They hate it, because, come on, get that camera out of my face, but I started photographing my family first, and then I just expanded it. But it's very important as Black photographers that we show that, because these are images. You got to remember the work is going to outlast you. I think James Baldwin said that, it's your work while you're here, but then you put out in the world, it's no longer yours, and that's what it is. So I try to create work that is going to stand the test of time, and 20 years from now, 30, 40 years from now, it can just show the pride in the Black community that you don't often see enough.
I kind of have two questions. So I am a journalist, as I told you, and I had to take pictures and do stories when E.J. Bradford was killed in Birmingham. And it took a toll on me. And I know you were talking about that earlier. How do you, I guess, you said you did some healing, but how do you heal from that? And how do you give yourself space to see what's happening, but I guess take yourself out of it so that you won't be affected by it? And then my other question is, I guess it's ethics. His mom at a visual, she passed out, and I saw all these cameramen like running to get the photo, and it bothered me because I'm like, well, she needs that space to like feel how she feels without being exploited. So what's the line for you?
Yeah, for me, I'm still learning how to heal. This is, you always going to feel attached to it. Definitely when you're documenting something that you're passionate about, that affects you. So it's something that's constantly evolving inside of me that I'm learning. And for me, speaking about it helps a lot. This is a part of my healing process. You're helping me heal right now, because what I find is when I keep it bottled up, that bottle's going to break one day, and I don't want it all on top of me at one time, so I talk about it if it's talking to my mom or my peers, or, shutting down, my friend wrote this amazing essay called Viral Executions. And it just talks about the fact that all these dead bodies always end up on the ground. People repost it all the time. You see the dead body, repost it. And he talks about how I don't need to see the dead body for me to be hurt. So like sometimes as photographers, we are digesting so much visual content, it's good to disconnect. It's times I just, deactivate all socials and take time for myself. And then the crazy thing about it is Black photographers, people will tell you, you need to be here, you need to be there. One, I draw the line where I don't just parachute into other people's communities. I'm really big on allowing everyone a space to speak for themselves. With George Floyd died, I show you need to be over here. That's what people DM like, wow, okay. How do you know if I got money to even fly out there? But that's not my community. But you know what I did do? I found photographers that I thought were real, that had the same moral compass in me, and I elevate. I use my platform to get their work seen. I did the same thing for my friend Brandon. My friend Brandon Ruffin shoots in Oakland. If something happens in Oakland, I don't need to be there. My brother's already there. It's out of respect for community. I just feel like as Black photographers telling their story, every time when it's your time, it's your time to speak. And I feel like we should elevate each other's voices in those spaces, because you can't run around just shooting everything. One, you're taking the narrative out of someone else's, mouth. You're not allowing them to speak for themselves, and you're taking up a lot of space. That's what I realized for myself in Baltimore. A lot of times I try to help elevate other photographers that I know, because I do take up a lot of space, but I feel like part of that healing process as an artist, as a photographer, is getting your work seen and getting the chance to speak your piece. Every photographer can't do that. So I try to elevate other, photographers, and it gives me time to take time for myself. So I wouldn't push yourself too far. I have some friends that have never, can't even touch a camera no more. I got friends that don't shoot protest no more because it's just too much for them now. And everybody has they different levels of breaking, and then even like, for instance, similar to Freddie Gray funeral, I didn't go. Why wasn't you there? That's why I draw the line, because I've been to, I don't even go to funerals no more. My uncle passed away from COVID last year, but that was like the first funeral I went to in a long time because it was my uncle. But I stopped going to funerals a long time ago because it's just too much. So it's just, always take that time, for yourself. And as far as, journalists, so you gotta remember, a lot of photographers don't even care about what they shoot. They're not connected to it. That's why they can just do it and get a check and then keep moving on to the next story. And that's the sad fact about it. But, I always try to have respect for my subjects and certain things. Like I said, I do, have images that I know people will want to be seen. And sometimes I know, this can probably win me an award. This can probably go viral. This definitely can be a cover of a magazine, but that's not why we make this work. This is not why I make this work. I'm not chasing time covers. That's why I make the work and I put it into the world. So, and that's another reason why I can't be like a real like journalist, like it's like Gordon, he had this thing where, he can document things, but he also can go to journalism where it was so different. The landscape was so different. He can go create that story and control that story. You see how he shot the stuff of Malcolm and how they try to frame it up, but he was able to come back and reframe it. And it's hard to do that in this day and age, and everything moves so fast. Media moves so fast that, you're digesting so much. The world is so small now, and that's why I draw the line that certain jobs I don't take, but some, and some jobs I will, but I try to only take jobs that I trust the editor, or I'm working with the writer, or, meaning we can work hand in hand, and I try to, work in that way. It's different ways around it, and I'm still figuring it out. I'm still early in my career figuring out my line might change sometimes, depending on what it is or how powerful if I feel like someone might get something from it, but depending on my subject, it's always, the subject matter is more important than me sometimes.
Any last questions?
Hi. I know you were speaking earlier about how there are some stories that you're not meant to tell. They're meant for other people to, put their own perspective on it. Are there stories that you've confronted that you didn't think you were right for, and it ended up being the perfect fit, or something that another time when you were confronted with a story and it was meant for someone else? I don't know, something along those lines.
Yeah, for instance, like when they did like the Women's March, like I said earlier, and they wanted me like to follow and pay me all this money, and I was like, no, here goes some black and brown women photographers, give them the job. And just, I also just love getting other artists paid too. I think that's something that we need to start doing more of, is making sure we can all eat. I remember, I started traveling recently, and I went to Salzburg, Austria, and like growing up in Baltimore, there's so many issues in Baltimore. A lot of times I didn't know what was going on outside of my own community, so when I found out what was happening in Salzburg, Austria, around ICE and, refugees coming across and trying to get into Germany, me and another photographer, because I was studying over there, we snuck into like this encampment, that's, the families allowed me to shoot. They had a translator there, but I just felt like I didn't have enough time to tell, these stories. I'm talking to families who said they walked 40 days to get here just with the clothes on their back. Another family, they can't find their siblings because the boat flipped over and they just hoping that they made it across. Heavy stuff. But, sometimes it was just too heavy, and I didn't have enough time to really dig in like I wanted to. So I just never put the work out. But it was a story that made me better as an artist, I think, and it's something that I think about all the time, and I think about the families and everything. And then a chance arrived where they were raising money for families, and there's a small community in Baltimore who has family there, and actually allowed them to use the images to help raise money about the story, and they wrote about what was going on, but that was almost like 3-4 years later, but I was so happy that the work found a place that it didn't need to come from me. I just was like, here, take it, because it was closer to them. I think one story was really hard that I did. I was shooting this police officer who's like, he's more so the cleanup crew. He's not even on the force no more. He's like, oh, black people mad at the police again. Let's go send him down here to go do damage control and throw a block party. But I shot him for the New York, and I didn't know what to expect. But by the time I noticed what they were doing, they're trying to make him like the Superman, the community cop. But I know him as the head buster because he was beating up black men in the projects in his younger days. They didn't want to talk about that. So, I had to pull the plug. If you're going to tell his story, tell his story in its entirety. You just wanted to make it seem like he was this community person. Like, no, like I have friends that he harassed in his younger days. Let's tell a whole story. So I had to pull a plug. Did I want that check? Yes, I did. I am still a starving artist, but, more compass, and I said, I'll hand the pictures over, but I need y'all to tell the real story. So a lot of times, it's all up to you. Just a lot of times I find that I would just take pictures for the pleasure sometimes, and they might be just for me, similar to those Salzburg, Austria. I found a place for it, and that's where it belonged, and it was able to do good in the community. So I always try to think about that when I'm documenting. Definitely it's not communities that I'm from. Do I have enough time to understand? Do I have enough time to spend with them? Do I even care enough to document this thing? Some things I don't care about, and that's what I had to realize in my career. That's the reason why I took a job. One of the main reasons I took a job at Under Armour. All right, I'm an artist. I need to make money, but I don't want to get paid I don't want to get, I don't want to get sent out to shoot things that I'm going to shoot on my own because I love it, because I live in it. I just got pulled over by police not too long ago and harassed, and this is my work. This is my life work. So I had to remove myself and I'm gonna shoot sports, even though it's on my checklist, but that keeps my conscience and keeps my heart pure, that I don't want to ever conform or change who I am or not stick to how my mother raised me, the man she wants me to be over money. So I told myself when I got into this field to remove and separate the two. I have my art, which is my, me documenting my community and controlling the narrative. But then I had that other side where I need to pay my bills and I need insurance because, so I had to remove those two things, and that's how, I do my career. I have passion projects that I do on my own. Like right now I'm documenting symbolism and, symbolism and gentrification in my community. Where it's like, our community is being gentrified, so much redlining, all these things going on. So I'm documenting the landscape. That's my personal project. You can't pay me to do that. And it's serious. I need to control the work. A lot of times when you shoot these projects, you don't control the work anymore. And I don't want, that's why the time covers, I own all my work. I don't give up. I say, you can lease it, you can hold it for 90 days, but I want it back. I had to control those narratives of the work because I know why I shot it.
Thank you both so much. That was a great conversation. I hope that everyone can join us afterwards for a reception outside. And I'd like to pass the microphone or have you go up. Thank you also to my amazing colleague, Joan. Thank you for your leadership and your partnership in this wonderful day.
So Devin, I have no words, but all I can say is thank you. Thank you for making the time to travel south. Thank you for sharing your story. And now I'm going to be the professor for a moment. Students, did you hear what he said? It's not about parachuting in. It's about making the time to get to know the people that you have the privilege, which I say every class, it's a privilege to be able to spend, even if it's 10 seconds, with someone that you've been assigned to report, cover their story. So thank you. Thank you very much. And Professor Gibson, thank you for being the Du Boisian scholar that you are, being able to tap in and to speak to Devin's spirit. I'm going to say that he would be able to share his story. So thank you. Thank you. Let us give them both a hand. And so just very quickly, thank you to the Jules Collins Smith Museum of Fine Arts at Auburn University. And please, as Chris has stated, please continue to talk. There's a Somali proverb, I'm paraphrasing, to agree to dialogue is the beginning of peaceful resolution. So let's continue to dialogue, and please remember that our discussion, our dialogue continues tomorrow at 5:30 at the Telfair Pete Theater at 5:30. And before we move to continue to celebrate each other, talk more, I want to remind you that Amber Richardson, please raise your hand, because we talked earlier about conversations such as this can cause trigger remembrances, trauma. So Amber Richardson is with us while we're talking to one another. If you need to spend some time with Amber, she's a licensed professional counselor. So she's here with us to help us as we process. So thank you all, and continue to enjoy.